Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining Painting with Picasso's Grapevine. My name is Leanna Hahn, and I will be your host and teacher for today. This is a new show, and we're going to teach you how to work through some different painting techniques. Hopefully, our goal will be to take the scary out of starting painting. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some painting techniques, specifically blending. And we're going to focus a little bit on foreground and background. Now, the foreground in any painting is something that's closest to you. So the focus will be to show how to show the difference between the two. The background, of course, is in the back. Now, before we get started, we'll talk about the supplies that we're going to need. We're going to start off with 3 paintbrushes. I'm using a number 12 filbert, a number 6 filbert, and a number 1 round. As for paint, we're going to use 3 different colors. Now, today I'm using acrylic paint, and it has a very, very smooth feel to it. It dries very fast. And we won't need a lot of colors. We have a very neutral palette today, and we'll be using white, black, and burnt umber. In addition, you should probably have a cup of water or some kind of water with you. And I would highly recommend some kind of apron, as well as a dab rag. So what this is going to be very helpful with is really kind of getting the water out of your paintbrush. We'll be moving back and forth between our water and our canvas, and if you get a little too much water on that canvas, you're going to lose all the hard work that you already started out with. So it'll be very important to dab these off as we're continuing on. So let's get this started. I'm going to start off by putting my number 12, my very large paintbrush, into the water and just getting it kind of moist and dabbing it off. So what we're going to do is we're going to decide first, where is the horizon? And if we look at the original, we see it's pretty much right down the middle. So I'll make that mark with my paint, starting with a little bit of the brown umber mixed in with a slight amount of the white. And we're going to just make a quick line. We're not going too hard, not too heavy, just because we want to make sure that it's just out there, just as a saving place. Now, the technique of blending is very helpful when you mix 2 colors together. The goal is to get kind of a smooth feel across the canvas. So I start out with a light color, choosing white, and we just make a very broad stroke. You'll also notice that my paintbrush is moving broadly across the canvas. I want to do this so that I can achieve that nice smooth feel. You can start at either edge and let your paintbrush flick off the canvas in the middle, but you don't want to start in the middle and stop in the middle because you won't get that smooth, consistent feel. You'll notice I'm jumping back and forth between my white and my burnt umber. And this is because I'm really kind of blending the 2 at the same time while I'm adding them to the canvas. Continuously moving back and forth. Now, you'll notice at some point your paint is going to start to get dry. Before it gets dry, that's the key. You want to jump back, grab more paint, and add it to the canvas. Plus, you'll notice that my strokes, while they're going back and forth, I'm very specifically focusing on keeping them straight because it's the skyline. So we want to create a nice whispery feel as we're going back and forth, but we don't want to create arcs or curves. We want to keep it nice and smooth. Now, in the original painting, it kind of looks like it's a very sepia feel, kind of a hazy look into the painting. So we're starting with that burnt umber and white again, and then we're kind of moving down. And as we move down, we'll continue with the white on top, continuously going back and forth. And you see how you get that really beautiful, nice streaky feel. You don't want to have the dimpling. And if you start seeing some dimpling, which is right here, add more paint. That's just your key. You'll notice off to the right here, I've got a little dimpling, so I just go right in on top of it, creating that nice smooth feel. Again, as we carry down the canvas, I'm going to now introduce just a hair of black. What we're trying to create is the background that is getting farther away. So the top of the skyline is brighter, As it gradually progresses down, it gets darker. That's going to imply that it is farther away. That's some of the techniques you use to achieve distance. I start with laying down a little bit of the black mixed with white. I don't want solid black. And then I immediately go over it with the white. Now, if you were to go ahead and do all black, let it dry, and then go over with the white, you just wouldn't get that nice, consistent feel. You would end up with a lot of dimpling, a lot of streaking, and the success of this painting really is driven by the blending. So we've got a lot of really nice, beautiful streaks. I'm going to continue on over to the side. Now, you don't have to take your paintbrush all the way off the canvas. Again, you can start and let it fall off the canvas and still have that nice continued feel. As I'm getting closer to the skyline, again, I'm going in with black, adding a little bit, just a hair more of black, just to give it that feeling of it's far away. Now, it's okay if you go off on the sides here. That's truly your choice. You may choose to go ahead and hang this in a frame, and if you do, then you don't have to worry about the sides. If you don't want to hang it in a frame and you want a nice finished look, go ahead and add some paint to the side. Not necessary. Totally up to you. I personally do like a finished edge. Just that way you have got some options. Again, continuing that back and right. Now, I kind of glance back to my original and go, okay, how are we looking here? Have we achieved the same feel? So before it dries very quickly, let's go back and darken up anything we want to darken up by putting first the dark umber color, quickly going over it in white. Creating any variations that we want to create. So variations you see between lighter clouds, darker streaks, lighter clouds, and then ultimately that darker last point before the horizon. And you see how quickly this goes. One of the key things you need to remember is you don't have to be so specific, especially in backgrounds and things that are far away. The eye itself really completes the picture. You just have to put out there a example or a hint of what should be out there, and your eye will go, oh yeah, that's clouds. I know that's supposed to be there. So don't worry about getting too specific on things. Now you'll notice I jumped back and forth and I did not go ahead and clean out my brush because we were doing a lot of blending. So I'm going to go ahead and clean it out now just by dropping it in the water and just swishing it out. Acrylic paint is made to come out very easily out of your cup, so you don't have to really worry about having to clean it too hard. You're pretty good. Now, the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to jump down to the bottom of our foreground, the foreground being the closest point towards you. Again, grabbing that burnt umber first. The reason I'm grabbing the burnt umber is predominantly because it's closer to me, and so it's going to be the darkest and the sharpest part of your painting. Starting with that burnt umber, moving back and forth across the canvas, just creating that depth. And you'll notice too, you may not have the final color that you're going to be happy with. There's a lot of working back and forth saying, okay, I want it darker, okay, I want it lighter. So making those decisions are key at the start before it dries. As we progress up the painting, I'm going to start introducing some more white. That will be very helpful to show it's now progressing towards a further distance. It's moving its way towards the horizon. Still keeping that nice, smooth back and forth. And for a while, every now and then, go ahead, take a step back, look at your painting. Make sure your strokes are going back. One of the key things I always tell my students is keep stepping back. Your eye cannot see the whole painting, and you can't get your perspective until you really take a step back and go, okay, things are proportionate, they're looking well, continue on. Again, I can still introduce some more of that burnt umber. I'm just going to quickly go right over it with the white painting. A lot of what I'm doing right now is also watching the distance of where I'm putting my strokes down. I'm saving a space out here, not covering it right now because I know I'm going to come in with another layer of black, and that's where we'll show the reeds to appear. So I'm not sweating that side of it, kind of letting it be. Again, jumping back and forth, adding a little bit more white, heavier on the white, and reintroducing some of that burnt umber. You notice how there's that nice, beautiful streak. Jumping right in the middle there and adding a few of those streaks. Let them come right off the canvas, right into the middle of your painting. And I love that. Now you've got this nice variation. It looks like it's water. It looks like it's flowing. It looks like it has movement. Continuing up all the way, get higher and higher up to that skyline. And we're going to put the lightest value of painting closest to the skyline. We want to make that nice distinction between horizon, the sky, and the water. So I'm going in, turning my paintbrush sideways now, using that as kind of a ruler or a pencil. Stepping back, really kind of making sure, do I have a nice straight skyline? Very important. Wobbly skyline would immediately grab your attention and wouldn't make sense to the eye. And you wouldn't be able to figure out, well, what's wrong with it? Why is it off? Again, making sure you go back and forth, covering up all that dimpling, a nice, beautiful blended look. Now, again, acrylic paints dry very, very fast. So completing one of these paintings in a very short amount of time is pretty darn easy. Now, for us to move on to the next step, what I've done is I've actually prepared another canvas that already has all of these elements ready. And I brought it with me so we can kind of just progress and continue on. Again, background. Mine is a little bit darker on the original, but again, the values just depend on your taste, where you want to start, where you want to stop. Now, the next step is to actually move on and put in our reeds. So the reeds right here are very close to you. They're very dark in the middle. However, they're very wispy around the ends. And again, keeping in mind that you don't have to make things so specific. The key to the success of this painting is really the very broad, general appearance of all the items on here. So we're kind of starting off saying, okay, I'm looking at the skyline coming straight across the painting, and I'm going to start adding the black values. I'm just going to put the undertones on here. And what this is doing is kind of setting you up. Kind of deciding, all right, where are those reeds going to go? Where are they going to start? Where are they going to end? And if mine end up going up a little farther than the other one, that's okay too, because it's nature. And that's the one very nice forgiving thing about doing landscapes, nature, things of that nature. It doesn't have to be, my tree doesn't have to look like your tree, but it still looks like a tree, and that's why they're very successful. And they're easier to learn, easier to teach. Now you'll notice I'm kind of doing just kind of a dabbing motion. And I'm paying attention to not make it a very straight line. Again, keep in mind, nature is not straight. You will never find a straight line in nature. So making sure that all of those top parts of the reeds are very inconsistent, because we're going to go over them with a very quick wisp on our smaller paintbrush, but I don't want a straight line, because it would catch your attention. Kind of just carrying that out and saying, okay, we're going to bring that out to about right there-ish. At this point, I'm going to go back to my very large paintbrush, making sure I wash out any paint that might be on there, get rid of any of that white, because we're dealing with solid black at this point. Grabbing some more of that black, and now I'm just going to fill in. Now, as far as technique inside, we don't care. we're just putting in this silhouette. So this is a shadow, this is a silhouette, very easy to achieve. Just bringing it down the canvas with not a whole lot of regard of what kind of strokes I'm putting in there. I'm just covering the canvas. Once I get that covered, then what I'm going to do is now I'm going to focus a little bit more on the blending between the reeds and the water. So we're going to go moving from left to right. We're going to stroke outwards and kind of bring that paint in. Continuing up the canvas and just kind of deciding where that water line is going to end. So I'm going to say, hey, it's going to be inconsistent. A nice inconsistent water line is much more attractive. Again, much more like nature. Just pulling that paint back and forth. If you start to see a little bit of dimpling, you need to go both directions, that's fine. As long as you cover it. All right. So we've got most of our blank space covered now that we left when we were originally putting in the water here. Now I'm going to jump back over to my number 6 filbert. And we're going to reintroduce some light color. So we're going to grab a little bit of that white, mix it lightly with the black, because we're going to bring in a little bit of gray, just at the edge of the water line. And this is a very, very light touch. You can barely, barely feel your paintbrush touching the canvas. Just kind of saying, okay, here's where it ends. If you feel you've added too much, go back and fix it. Again, I started moving right to left, now I'm moving left to right, carrying out the end of that water line. I'm grabbing my very large paintbrush and just kind of taking away any excess gray that I may have left on the canvas. Letting it remain just the gray, just remain on the outside. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our number 1 round and go in and we're going to make those really cool, very wispy reeds. Now, reeds themselves are just a very quick wisp, nothing to it. If you're finding that you're having a hard time getting a lot of dimpling, add a little bit of water, that'll help. The other key element to keep in mind is that you don't want to make them all the same side. Again, nature is not consistent. The one thing that you will always help to achieve a really good realistic painting is if it is different heights, different variations, different thicknesses, different textures. Have some jump up really high. Don't put them evenly spaced out as well. Keep them uneven. Now at this point I'm going to grab a little bit of white, reintroduce that as well. Very light. Just kind of taking it up. Continuing all the way across. And this is where you can take some time and really kind of play with it and say, okay, I see some reeds growing down here. They're generally on the water line. That's a pretty good space for them. I'm jumping back and forth to the white, making some thicker, making some thinner. Just kind of carrying them up. And really, how many reeds you choose to put is truly up to you. You can't go wrong. Can't put too many, can't put too few. That's a personal preference. And the last item that we're going to move on to is that bird. So that bird looks a little scary, but it's really not. The key thing to remember is that bird's far away. You can't see the detail on that bird. Don't sweat the detail on that bird. The bird will be just fine if just a hint of the bird is there. I'm going to add a little bit more of my water. Don't forget, that makes it kind of flow very nicely. And just add a few. This is where you can spend some time kind of playing, getting the nice combination of how many reeds you want on there. Now, the last part for the bird is just kind of deciding where you're going to put the bird. So, starting looking at your canvas, it has interest because it's crossing the horizon. So, our bird is about, gosh, probably about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. So, use your hands. Your hands are fabulous measuring tools. Just kind of get a gauge. Grab your number 1 brush, and we're just going to put a quick dot, about right here. His head's coming just a little bit over the horizon, and then the tail's coming a little bit under the horizon. Your focus here will be to get the form in. You don't really care about all the details. We're just going to get the form in, starting with the head. The elegance of this bird is the nice slender neck. So just kind of taking out just a little bit of a beak, and then carrying that nice slender neck down. Then we'll kind of go into the body. I'm still using the black and white, just kind of jumping back and forth, deciding, all right, this maybe is a little bit too thick or a little too dark between black and white, just to get our outline. And don't forget, the background colors are very similar to what the foreground colors are, so if you make a mistake, you just go over it. Kind of starting right in the middle and bringing that up, and that is the top of your wing. Pretty simple. Then kind of carrying it down, jumping back and forth between the black and white. We got some really pretty feathers here, just kind of coming out. And again, you don't have to worry about the exactness of this particular bird. He's out in the distance, he's flying off. Ironically, this one is called Romeo, and we have another one where he's going to meet the bird, and it's called Juliet. So, kind of cute, doing it for Valentine's Day. I keep looking back over to my original just to kind of get a gauge of how I'm coming along with my drawing techniques. And what's cool here is this bird is dragging his legs as he's taking off. So just kind of completing where the legs are. Don't sweat doing all the details on the leg. It's very important to ignore that because we don't want to see that. He's far away. Coming back in, just kind of filling in the body, always keeping the darker part on the bottom and the lighter part on top. Keeping the darker part on the top of the wing, and then the lighter part where the feathers would be. And right there in the middle, we're going to do a little bit of medium gray. And this is again where you would play. Just kind of get the right perspective, the right size. The cool thing about this is below that bird, we're just going to do a little hint of a shadow, because we know the bird is flying over the water. So we're just doing a little bit, just to kind of say, all right, there's some type of reflection on the water. You don't know where it's at, it's just kind of there. Hopefully, some of these blending techniques are ones that you can actually take home with you and use them at home. Play with it, try it, experiment with it. Don't be discouraged. If you mess up the first time, no worries. Let it dry, paint over it, try again. Join us next time with Painting with Picasso's Grapevine. Thank you.